guys, it's Dr. Stokes at Doc Mom MD, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about sleep schedules. How many parents are tired of your bed becoming the group congregation spot? I can still remember enjoying sleeping in my parents' bed, and so I would probably be considered one of the biggest hypocrites because I did not allow my kids to sleep with us unless they were ill or during like a really bad storm. So I just wanted to share a little bit of background about sleep based on the ages, and then we can talk a little bit about recommendations for a sleep schedule. So during the newborn period, newborns kind of do their own thing. You know, we really don't stress too much about how much they're sleeping because they can sleep anywhere between 16 to 20 hours a day. And at that stage, we usually just try to gently transition them from a day schedule to a nighttime schedule. It can be extremely challenging to teach a baby to sleep on a schedule, especially during pregnancy. You know, it can be like babies will be asleep during different patterns of activity. When moms are trying to sleep, the babies are trying to be awake, and can be a really bad habit that we have to change. At about 2 months of age, the baby usually is doing well with a feeding schedule, and you can become a little bit more aggressive when it comes to adjusting their sleep schedule and their patterns for feeding. I would definitely recommend talking to your pediatrician about if it's safe enough for your baby to sleep for longer stretches based on how healthy they are, to start a schedule and a routine. Around 4 months of age, babies learn how to self-soothe a little bit easier, and that's when I usually start talking about a routine that could potentially help the baby have healthier sleep habits. Now, anywhere between like a 4 to a 6 hour stretch is reasonable for the range of sleep. Some parents would say, oh, I can't wait for my babies to sleep through the night. 12 hours would be great. Well, that's really unlikely for a kid under the age of 1 to sleep that long. And especially if you're breastfeeding, you can just kind of forget it because the babies will sleep and eat throughout the night, a little bit off schedule depending on how full they are. At about 6 months, if you haven't started a schedule, some of those bad habits can start to form, so it can be a little bit challenging to stay on a routine when it comes to understanding the differences between sleep. So in the daytime, you want to give your baby a lot of stimulation so that hopefully they'll be ready to sleep when nighttime comes. So as far as some of those recommendations go, one of the first things I always say is make sure you still have your cuddle time. I definitely know how challenging it could be when you are working through the day and you want to come home and rest, but you want to just have that time to love on your kids. And I think that we all should have the ability to do that no matter what our schedules are. But making sure that we do that in a particular order so that you have like your rocking time, your singing time, your feeding schedule, all prior to laying them down for night. With that cuddle time, you still get that ability to bond with your baby, but also still staying on a good routine. And when you lay them down, ideally you want them to lay down when they're almost asleep, kind of in that like kind of woozy stage where they're not completely out, because it can kind of increase their anxiety and make them cry a little bit more if you wake them up or if they wake up in the middle of the night and you're not there. Second thing to remember is that crying will not scar your baby forever. As a parent, I definitely know what it feels like for your baby to just be screaming and all they want is you to pick them up. And we definitely have that pull and that drive to do that. But as a physician, I recognize the fact that we've never had a baby die from crying. Of course, it can be really jarring for us to hear that. And I can still remember trying to like set my timer to determine how long I would let my kids cry before I would go get them. But the reality is, there's no way around this. I'll have a parent who will say, Dr. Stokes, I really want my baby to sleep, but, I don't want them to cry. Not going to happen. That is just, you have to kind of make up your mind which way you want to go with that. There was actually a study done, though, that was in the American Academy of Pediatrics, one of the journals back in like 2012, that talked about how having a sleep routine and a good nighttime routine does not adversely affect the children in the long run. The third thing is schedule, and schedule being the key when it comes to sleep. So Some babies are super easy. You'll have those families that, you kind of want to roll your eyes at, and you like secretly hate them and envy them at the same time when they say things like, oh, my baby slept through the night from, 6 weeks on. The reality is that does not usually happen. And a lot of times we even forget that as we have other children, of how sleep deprived we can be while you're trying to help them establish a good routine. One of the hard parts I think about being a parent is actually setting boundaries. And if we don't help them get on a good sleep habit, it will affect them for years to come. So kids stay healthy on a good routine, and they actually thrive on a schedule. Fourth, if you do not want your baby in your bed, you have to sleep train them. I know it's challenging. Nobody really wants to do that. It sounds very stressful. Train your kids like you're working out for a marathon. Inevitably, there's always one parent at least that wants the kid to get out of their beds. And it can also cause a lot of contention between parents. So as much as possible, you want to get on the same terms when it comes to that, because there's usually, the baby's not going to do it on their own. Who wouldn't want that nice physical comfort, that warm body that gives them all that protection and love? They've been used to that when they were like in the womb, so they don't want to come against that. But from the parent standpoint, you can be so exhausted when you're sleep deprived. It can cause more frustration for the next day. And you're easily irritated, when you don't get enough rest. We know how it affects us on the job, but we definitely don't want that to come against, how we treat our kids and how short we are with them. So having a good schedule can actually help both parties. Now, I am really sensitive to families who don't really have a choice when it comes to, their baby sleeping in the room with them or having to be right with them. So, I am a little bit more aware that there are situations that there's nothing we can do about with that. I also will say that if a baby is not in the same room with you, it makes it easier where they can't just reach over that little pack and play and see you over there and start crying out. But of course, you don't want them in the bed with you so that you can have that ability to get them on a routine. So also check out my other video that talks a little bit about co-sleeping and what's safe and what's not. I want to make sure parents don't feel like this is a standoff with your children. A lot of times it's like train them, get them on a schedule, get them on a routine. But more of like this is a battle of the wills. No judgment, because I remember those times when I was extremely exhausted in the process of starting it and just not really having the energy or the stamina to go back and forth in and out of the rooms to try to help them get on a routine. So the fifth thing I would say is start a game plan. We talked about you and whoever your partner or spouse is being on the same. So I usually recommend one of two methods. One of those methods is kind of starting a low and slow process. So once you kind of have a toddler, between like 12 months or so and up, before you just run into the room, you really want to let them cry just a little bit, a few seconds before you go in, especially if you know that they're well fed, they're changed, they're not ill, before you go in and just really pick them up right away and try to soothe them. Again, they start to self-soothe about the 4-month range. So if you don't have to go in there and engage, it's always better. So giving them a little bit of time to do that. There are some babies that do well with parents going kind of in and out of the room. So for example, if you waited, say 5 minutes, then you go into the room, see the baby, make sure they're okay. Sometimes even going over to like pat them on the back a little bit, but remembering not to do a lot of conversation. That can be stimulating for the baby, and it can actually get them more inclined to like stand up on the crib, reach for you, try to grab for you, all those kind of things. You can also consider like sitting in a chair as the baby is in the crib or the pack and play. That way they know you're there and they have the reassurance that you're there, and it may actually encourage them to start laying down. That really works when the kid is a little bit older, like around 2, where they can understand, hey, mom is sitting here. If she steps out, I recognize that she's not going to come back for a certain amount of time. It can kind of help them to at least stay on target with that. The other method that I talk about, which is kind of like in a category in and of itself, so like the 6th thing I would say would be the cry it out method. So hold up, do not stop the video, hear me out a little bit. Some parents hate for me to say cry it out. it just sounds so mean. It's like I'm forcing my child to feel a certain way. But there are some babies that are so determined, they have such strong will and endurance that they will not go for the going in and out of the room. And parents know who their children are and how aggressive that they are. I think the biggest thing is just remembering that you're not a bad parent if you choose to do that. And the cried out method sometimes can actually be a little bit faster when it comes to sleep training. You just need consistency, at least a week and a half to 2 weeks, which is why you need that good partnership if you're not by yourself, to be able to say, we can do this, don't go in, remember what she said, so that we can kind of be on the same pattern. And again, this is for healthy children, not kids with, special needs or eating issues and things like that. So I know this is a lot of information you have to wrap your head around. And I would love for you to just share this video with, grandparents, caretakers, babysitters, all that who could potentially be involved in a nighttime routine, so there can be consistency. And I would love for you to like, share, and subscribe this video on YouTube. Or you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at DocMomMD. If you are in the Atlanta area, I would love for you to visit me as a patient at Ivy League Pediatrics in Norcross or Alpharetta Pediatrics in Roswell. If you can just remember, behavioral techniques have no long-lasting effects. They can decrease patients' anxiety, they can actually help with parental depression, and it can create great habits for years to come. So the more we help them, the more we keep them on a schedule, the more that they are getting good rest, the happier and healthy they will be. Join me next time.